Spock's research vessel engaged its cloaking device, and Kirk found it a challenge to follow. Kirk adjusted the sensors on his two-person vessel to cover a broader range, then projected the research ship's current course. Less than a parsec distant sailed a lone bird of prey, which just happened to hold a small Federation scout in its tractor beam. This was no doubt the vessel Spock pursued. When at last he was within transporter range of the vessel, Kirk checked his scanners. The bird of prey was uncloaked, unshielded, apparently unaware or unafraid of its pursuers. Curiously, the life-form readings indicated only 3 Romulans aboard. Either the rest of the crew had deserted ship or been killed. There were 2 humans aboard, one on the lowest level of the ship, probably the brig, and one on the bridge. Instinct told Kirk that McCoy was a prisoner in the brig, which meant he was shielded from transporter beams to prevent escape. Kirk would have to beam over to release him, then transport the 2 of them back. There was also 1 Vulcan aboard, most likely McCoy's mysterious kidnapper. Kirk set the ship on autopilot, then went over to the small transporter and locked in the coordinates for the bird of prey's brig. Zacho's face contorted with rage as he recognized his foe. He leapt to his feet, addressing his former student by his chosen name. Soltek, so you are trying to stop me again. But the circumstances were far different from those of 2,000 years before. For now, Sotek's mind was closed, impenetrable. Impossibly, this human woman had brought Sotek onto the ship without Zachel's knowledge. The realization made Zachel afraid. The woman's form began to glow a soft blue tinged with gold. She took a step forward and spoke aloud in a voice Zachel recognized as Sotek's own. And now, Master, your time has come again. McCoy lay on the cold, hard floor of the brig and waited for death. His mood swung wildly from optimism to total despair. There was one thing to be thankful for. It seemed Zachel had forgotten him, or decided he wasn't worth worrying about. McCoy took the thought to its logical conclusion. If Zachel arrived on Cha Rihan as promised, would anyone think to look in the brig in all the excitement? In his mind's eye, McCoy saw a little skeleton lying curled on its side behind the brig's force field. The thought was almost funny, in a grim sort of way. Starving to death in a brig was probably a better end than those he'd seen Zachel dish out. McCoy blinked as he saw a shimmer of light on the other side of the force field. It began to take on humanoid shape. McCoy pushed himself to a sitting position. He half expected Spock, but as the materialization completed, he recognized Jim Kirk. His first reaction was gratitude. His second, fear. McCoy got to his feet just as Kirk pressed the control that dissipated the force field. They met in the doorway and grasped each other's arms.
Jim! Well, I'm sure glad to see you, but I'm damn sorry to get you mixed up in this. We've got to get out of here right away or he'll stop us. He knows everything that happens, Jim. He can read people's minds.
Kirk smiled and drew the doctor out into the corridor.
Take it easy, Bones. You're babbling. If you're talking about your Vulcan, he must not be able to read everyone's mind. He certainly couldn't stop me from coming.
Look, Bones, my ship's scanners show another human on board. Who is it? Is it Dr. Llewellyn?
McCoy gasped, horrified at the thought.
You mean Dwen? Well, I don't know. I guess she could have followed. After all, it was her ship that was stolen. My God, I hope not. Where is she?
The bridge, along with the Vulcan and 2 Romulans.
McCoy swayed and groped blindly for the nearest support. Kirk grasped his arm and steadied him.
Oh, Jim, you're not thinking of going up there, are you? That's insane. Why don't we just beam back to your ship and then transport the human off the bridge?
I'm alone, Bones. We have to use the Romulans' transporters to get back. The minute we do, the people on the bridge will know about it and raise their shields. And we'll never be able to get her off the bridge.
You stay here, Bones. If I don't make it back in 2 minutes, activate the transporter. I've locked in the coordinates. Wait a dad-blasted minute. You can't go up there by yourself, Jim. If you think you can just walk in and stun him with your phaser, you're wrong. He'll kill you before you know what's hit you. This Vulcan can think people dead.
Kirk stared at him.
Bones, you're suggesting we leave without even checking to see who it is? Leave a person who could be your friend up there with him and let him take that kind of power to the Romulans?
McCoy put his face in his hands and rubbed as if to wipe away his confusion.
No. Yes. I mean, hell, I don't know what I mean. If it's Dwen, I can't leave her there. And even if it's not...
The doctor sighed. There was no escaping death. He might as well embrace it. Running away would only prolong the wait for the inevitable.
All right, Jim. I can't let you go up there alone. Lead the way to the bridge, damn it. Only don't entertain any hopes about leaving.
Sotek raised the shield around Dwen's body and waited for the contest to begin. In the midst of it all, Dwen felt a deep sense of peace that verged on euphoria. The events of her life had all led to this moment and were not random, but braided together with meaning. And what she had regarded as her greatest flaw had become her greatest talent. Sotek wasted none of their energy on attack. He erected the shield, then waited for Zackle to exhaust himself. Zackle also erected a protective shield, this one scarlet tinged with gold, and began to wage war. With a swift motion of his arms, he gathered up his energy and hurled it at Dwen. Her blue shield was engulfed by an orange-red wall of flame, the heat of which was so great that the Romulan female sitting at a nearby station was incinerated. Her hair and uniform blazed brightly for a few seconds, then dulled to cinders as she slumped forward over her console. Sotek and Dwen could not spare the energy to grieve for her. The firewall stopped at the edge of the blue aura, where it broke into small tongues of flame that swirled along the shield's edge before fading away. Zackle paused expectantly for Sotek's response. None came, and the fact seemed to infuriate him even more. There was an ominous rushing sound on the bridge as the air grew hot and began to stir. Fine grains of red sand leapt into existence and trembled, suspended on the wind, then hurtled forward. The wind increased, yowling, until the surviving Romulan clung desperately to the helm, his uniform tunic rippling against the skin of his back. Zackle, Sotek said silently to Caradwen. It was their foe's name. Yet somehow, Dwen understood that Sotek meant the word in its ancient sense. The Fury. The Desert Storm. As the door slid open, Kirk crouched low and propelled himself forward onto the bridge. McCoy followed. The Bird of Prey's bridge was a swirling red hell. Kirk and McCoy were caught up in a hot, wailing wind, so powerful that the doctor dropped to his hands and knees. The wind lashed against him, stinging his cheeks and hands, cutting his bare skin. The red swirls and the pain were caused by tiny grains of red sand of the type found on the Balkan desert. The doctor knew then he had finally gone mad. There was a sandstorm on the bridge. The wind and sand blinded them. McCoy shielded his streaming eyes as best he could. Next to him, Kirk had also fallen to his knees and was struggling to raise the phaser. Something heavy struck McCoy. He cried out, startled, but the noise was swallowed by the wind. He looked down to see the body of a Romulan female, covered with dark green buboes, subcutaneous hemorrhages. He reached out to find a pulse. The skin of her neck crackled like paper beneath his fingertips. The dry heat and sand had drawn all the moisture from her body. McCoy drew away in disgust. At the other end of the bridge stood Zackle, ensconced in a protective sphere of fiendish red. Amazingly, he seemed unaware of the intruders. His attention was focused on the patch of blue a few meters away. Caradwen. As awesome and terrifying as Zackle appeared, Dwen seemed every bit his match. Some miracle had transformed her from a mere human to a magician as powerful as the Vulcan. Within the shimmering blue field that protected her, Dwen's face was strong and serene and content. Yet McCoy was afraid for her sake. He shouted so loud that his voice broke, barely loud enough to be heard over the roaring wind.
Dwen! Dwen! It's me! Leonard!
Behind the blue aura of safety, Dwen turned her head to look at him. At first sight, she smiled. And then her expression of joy turned to one of fear. The wind slackened as Zackle gathered up a ball of flaming energy and launched it in the direction of McCoy and Kirk. In that instant, McCoy saw death coming at him in the form of a fireball. He had time to feel sorry he'd dragged Kirk into this and to think the single thought, save yourself, Dwen. He felt the heat of the approaching blast singe his lashes and brows and closed his eyes. Dwen cried out,
Leonard, no!
It was the moment of choice. Sotek had made his long ago. He would gladly embrace annihilation to stop Zackle. But it was Caradwen's body, and Caradwen who had to make the final decision. Dwen made her choice. Before the fireball could touch McCoy or Kirk, they were both suddenly enveloped in a soft blue glow. The wind and sand could not penetrate it. The flames hit the shield with a roar, and then dissipated. But the extra expenditure of energy caused Dwen's own shield to weaken. Zackle wasted no time. He launched another bolt of heat at Dwen. The shield dimmed. The impact knocked her to the ground. She tried to stand up and found she could not.
Leonard, Admiral, go. Protecting you drains me. He knows that. Go, so that I can hold him here. Otherwise, we're all dead.
Tears streamed down McCoy's face, even though his eyes were sheltered now from wind and sand. He threw himself against the edge of the protective field and shouted at Zackle.
Leave her alone, you bastard! If you want to make someone suffer, take me! Leonard, please go!
For one bitter moment, Dwen tasted despair. McCoy and Kirk would die with her in the explosion that was coming, and her death would lose its meaning. She began to weep, and even Sotek's wisdom could not comfort her. And then McCoy's and Kirk's bodies began to shimmer and blink. Earlier, on the research vessel, Spock had detected the bird of prey's auto-destruct warning. He realized that the small Vulcan ship would be safe so long as Sotek engaged Zachel's full concentration. But it had been Spock's understanding that Dr. Llewellyn and Sotek intended to return from their mission. Spock swiveled in his chair to look at Sai, where she lay on the bunk.
Hi, Master. The Romulan vessel has just issued an auto-destruct warning.
Sai's reaction was not the one Spock had hoped for.
All is as it must be, Spock. Dr. Llewellyn knew of the consequences. It was her choice.
I turned back to my station and struggled to contain my emotions. Sai has just informed me, in essence, that Caradwyn is intentionally sacrificing herself. To attempt to rescue her now would be suicide. If I beam her over from the Romulan ship, Zachel would sense it and destroy them all while Caradwyn's molecules are in transit. And the secret knowledge would fall into the hands of the Romulan Empire. Yet the thought of leaving Dr. Llewellyn distresses me more than I can admit. If there were only some way to save her. I scanned the interior of the Romulan ship. How can this be? There are now 3 humans aboard. Earlier, there were only 2. Clearly, Jim Kirk has beamed over to the bird of prey. In studying the readout, I observed that no life forms register on the 3rd level, with the exception of a Romulan on the engineering deck. The brig is empty. And the 3 humans and 1 Vulcan all on level 1, bridge level. If my analysis is correct, this will seriously jeopardize Dr. Llewellyn's plan. If McCoy and Kirk follow their emotions and rush up to the bridge thinking to save Caradwyn, they will wind up killing her. And themselves. Once again, I fine-tune the sensors. There is 1 human emitting unusually high energy readings. This must be Dr. Llewellyn. The other 2 humans are therefore Dr. McCoy and Kirk. As I watch, something extraordinary begins to happen. The sensors begin to detect an energy emission surrounding the 2. Caradwyn is trying to protect them. Perhaps I am already too late.
McCoy stood next to Kirk on the transporter pad of the research vessel and was startled at his unfamiliar surroundings. The doctor was far too distraught to react to the sight of his Vulcan friend.
Gwen! Where's Gwen? Spock! You gotta beam her up right away. Zachel is killing her!
Spock could not bring himself to answer. The thought that he had indirectly caused Dr. Llewellyn's death and was now powerless to help her filled him with heaviness. He turned from his friends and went back to the helm. In fewer than 2 minutes, the bird of prey would self-destruct. Less than a minute remained for Spock to pilot the ship out of danger. McCoy stepped down from the platform and followed Spock to the pilot's console.
Spock, don't you hear me? Gwen's over there, and Zachel's killing her. You've got to do something now.
Spock brought the ship around 180 degrees. He plotted the most direct course out of the neutral zone and fed it into the computer. Kirk leaned down to peer into the Vulcan's face.
Spock, Caradwyn is over there. Why won't you answer us?
McCoy reached out and roughly grabbed Spock's shoulder.
For God's sake, Spock, can't you hear me?
The Vulcan turned and gave McCoy a look that made him let go immediately.
I hear you, Doctor. I hear.
He turned back to the controls. As McCoy and Kirk vanished from the storm, Cara Dwen's sorrow turned to joy, and the blue glow around her brightened against the swirling red dust. She knew she was wounded, yet she and Sotek were so focused on their task that neither of them knew the nature or extent of her injuries, nor felt the pain. Only one thing mattered now, that she hold on, that she live long enough to distract Zacho while Spock and the others made their escape. Cara Dwen was glad, very glad. All the pain that came before with Michael, her parents, her grandparents, all that had not been wasted. It had happened for a reason. Only one regret now, that she could not explain all this to Leonard and Spock. She wanted them to know that she was happy in this. But they would have to deal with her death in their own ways. 20 seconds. The storm eased. Zacho was laughing at her, at Sotek. He could see that she was dying and sneered.
How fortunate, Sotek, that I never made a promise to save you from the second death.
Dwen let Sotek speak.
And how fortunate, Master, that my promise to you has been fulfilled. I have saved you once. I shall not do so twice.
10 seconds. Zacho's eyes widened as he contemplated the meaning of Sotek's words. He was on the verge of saying something when Cara Dwen interrupted.
Taste my magic, old man.
The bridge dissolved into white brilliance. On the overhead, the bird of prey exploded into a dazzling burst of white light. Spock and Kirk looked away. McCoy watched and let himself be blinded.
No. It should have been me. Not her. Not Dwen. It should have been me.
The temporary blindness cleared. On the screen, the brilliance had faded, leaving in its wake clouds of red dust. A small and angry nebula.
It should have been me.
As the doctor looked away from the view screen, his gaze met Spock's. The Vulcan's eyes were haunted. And in that moment, McCoy understood that he had spoken for both of them. Mid-morning, Shanghai Car Plaza Hotel. A few days after Dwen's death, McCoy sat by himself at a booth for 4 and stared across the bar at the empty table where Dwen had read Spock's cards. He was alone in the room except for a surly Tellarite waiter and a red-nosed earther who was already drunk at 11 o'clock in the morning, Vulcan Central Time. McCoy had ordered a shot of bourbon, but when it arrived, he couldn't drink it. He'd been drinking far too much lately, a bad habit, trying to blot out unpleasant memories. Right now, McCoy didn't want to forget. He wanted to remember Cara Dwen, wanted to try to sort out what had happened. It was impossible to believe that she was dead. Harder still to believe how she had died, and that her prophecy had been fulfilled. Except that she had substituted herself and Zacco for Spock and McCoy. McCoy decided then that he had damn well better make every remaining second of his life count, because the thought of Dwen dying in vain was too horrible to bear. Certainly there was something worthwhile he could do that didn't involve Starfleet. There was all that Fabrini medical knowledge. Maybe he could do some practical research with it, find a few more cures, maybe take the medical innovations to some less advanced planets, where such knowledge would normally be long in coming. Maybe save a few lives that would otherwise not be saved. McCoy became so lost in thought that a full minute passed before he realized someone was standing beside the table. McCoy assumed it was the waiter and said,
Nothing else, thanks.
Dr. McCoy? McCoy glanced up, startled. Spock looked drawn and severe in a cape and trousers of black. If McCoy hadn't known Vulcan customs better, he might have thought Spock was in mourning. He had not seen Spock since their arrival on Vulcan. In fact, they had not spoken during the long journey back from the neutral zone. The doctor knew that Spock was enduring his own private hell, just as McCoy endured his. McCoy gestured at the seat across from him.
Spock, I didn't expect to see you again.
Sit down. Spock sat stiffly. His spine did not touch the back of the cushioned bench. This will be our last meeting, Doctor. I have come to take my leave of you. McCoy did not understand at first.
I admit, Spock, it'll be a while before our paths cross again, but that doesn't mean we won't.
I shall soon become a student of Kolinar, Doctor. I shall not see you or any of my friends or family again. McCoy was too weary, too drained by grief to react to the thought of never seeing the Vulcan again. A part of him simply could not believe. A part of him felt that whenever he needed help, Spock would somehow be there. He looked at Spock with a mixture of fondness and melancholy.
You know, Spock, I can't say I blame you. In fact, maybe these Kolinar folks have the right idea. Maybe we'd all be better off without emotions.
Spock studied the doctor guardedly for a moment and then said,
And you, Doctor, what plans do you have? Me? Well, I don't know. Maybe I'll follow your lead. I'd like to hide out in the wilderness for a while and maybe grow a beard. Look, Spock, I know I lost my head on the ship and said some cruel things.
You needn't apologize, Doctor.
I just wanted you to know I was sorry. Spock, you think it was true? Did Dwen really foresee our deaths?
It scarcely matters, Doctor. Whether she truly foresaw our deaths or not, the outcome is still the same. She sacrificed herself to win our lives. McCoy contemplated this silently. And then Spock rose and parted the fingers of his right hand in the Vulcan salute. We shall not see each other again, Leonard McCoy. Live long and prosper. The doctor stood, surprised by the sudden tightness of his throat.
Goodbye, Spock. Take care.
Simon & Schuster Audio presents Star Trek